this week. And we were like, that was up yesterday. And we were like, yeah, that's kind of summed up our week. So, some weeks are very smooth sailing, and this was not one of them. So we are very happy to be here with all of you guys and getting to play with wine for a while and think about things that are fun. So I hope this is not the sixth Monday for anybody here. And if it is, I hope it's a good reset. So we're on to good things. So
I felt bad for the poor guy who said it's the fifth Monday this week, because I walked in there with a really strange part, which I always do, from a German vine weeding machine, and the hose broke, and I needed to have it redone, and I needed a special end. And I thought, so you guys possibly have this? And they looked at it and they said, oh my gosh, no way. Well, let me check. And he goes in the back, and somebody had ordered the same part, custom part, like 3 months ago, and then never picked it up. And they had one of them sitting there. And I thought, oh, this is my lucky day. So it was not a fifth Monday.
Maybe we had 4 Mondays. But it had been a long Monday, children. A lot of, anyway. So, do you think everybody's in? You're all right. Excellent. So, first of all, hello, everybody. It is great to see
Sarah,
everybody here.
Ed.
Yeah. So we mostly have Black Anklers here, but I know because we have our association with these couple of charities that we have a few folks that have come in through those avenues. So we want to say a special hello to of course, a hello to the Black Ankle folks who we adore, but also a special welcome to the previous Black Anklers, I guess we'll say, to the folks who maybe found us through one of the organizations that we're working with for this round. And we may talk a little bit more about Black Ankle and wine stuff than we otherwise would, because some of you folks may not know as much about us. So a little bit of introduction in terms of process and how we like to work and all of that. So as many of you know, we have a plan. Well, actually, much more than usual, we actually do have a plan for today, because we kind of come in and wing it on the topics that we pick. We have a plan, we have an order, we have thoughts on how it should all go, but we are always happy to have everything we do here be more of a conversation and kind of driven by everybody, who's on the other end, and kind of try to focus on what we can do to make it interesting for everybody else. So we'll start in with kind of our agenda, I guess, but please feel free to chime in with questions. The best is to put them on the chat, and you can send to everyone or you can send to us. And I have another computer over here where I try to read the chat and keep up, and we'll try to keep that going. Our rough outline is that we were going to talk a little bit about winemaking and barrels and kind of what all this is, and then taste through the wines with you with a couple little exercises in mind, I guess. And then if we feel like it and everybody's game, we may actually send you into breakout rooms to play with the wine. So, and then come back. So it should be a little more interactive maybe than usual.
Great.
So yeah.
Sounds fun to me.
Sounds fun to you, right? So usually, again, if anyone's done the barrel tastings before, usually the barrel tasting is my rodeo.
Yes.
Ed is the special guest star, and he's only going to be a very short-lived special guest star, because although we planned this months in advance and thought we had the perfect time that would work for us, out of nowhere, our youngest son's soccer team, who Ed coaches, has a game at 7:00 tonight. So he's going to be here for the first hour, maybe.
Hour
15 minutes, and then he'll duck off, and we'll make all the blends without him. So we'll just let him know what we came up with. Anyway, so.
Great. Excellent. And I just want to say, this is kind of nice for me anyway. We don't do this as much as we should. We get caught up in what's going on now in the vineyard, the winery, or going to get a new hose at the whatever, and all of that. And we rarely take time to sit back and taste our own wines as they're in barrel and things. So I'm kind of looking forward to this, because there are several of these I have literally not tasted since they were in tank, in October.
Yeah.
So this will be kind of fun.
Yeah. So all of the wines in your lineup are from the 2020 vintage. So they're the newer wines. We will bottle this year only 2019s. for a number of reasons, partly because 2019 was this little tiny harvest and we just don't have much wine from it. I just don't want to use those wines up. So we're gonna play with 2020. So they're all younger wines. We'll talk a little bit about what that will mean as far as how that's probably going to impact the way they taste. But that's just something to know. So the wines that you're tasting today, we will not officially blend, and we will officially blend next winter, where we actually decide how they're to end up, I guess, and then they will be bottled next spring, and then they will be for sale like sometime in late to mid 2022 to 2023. So these are kind of wines, but that are a little bit in the long time horizon. But again, it's a great exercise to kind of taste. And I think one of the reasons we chose these young wines is they are wines that as a consumer, you just don't get a chance to taste wines kind of like partially made, I guess. So they are completely wine in that they've finished their fermentation process. They've gone through their malolactic fermentation, which is kind of an acidic change. They are complete as far as kind of, I guess you want to say, biological or chemical systems have gone, and now they're just going to go through the aging process. So every one of these wines we pulled out of a barrel. All of our red wines are aged in what are primarily French oak barrels. Can we talk a little bit about barrels and why they're not all French oak? Or
sure. These are all. We do almost all of our reds. No, we do all of our reds in barrel.
We age them in barrel.
We age them in barrels. Some are new barrels. Some are used barrels. They can be once used, twice used, 3 times. We tend not to have much anything older than that. We sell those barrels off. They still hold liquid. They're wonderful at that, but they've lost some of the magic of a newer barrel. So we age everything in that. It's always a bit of a I don't know, a Tetris game or something, trying to figure out what goes where. The new barrels tend to, I don't want to, well, we're going to taste them, but
yeah, that's fine. It's one of the things.
New barrels tend to have much more impact on the wine, both in the tastes and aromas, but also in the structure, as we'll talk more about, but the kind of feel of the wine gets lifted up by a new barrel. It also can overwhelm a wine. If the wine isn't strong enough, the barrel can overwhelm it and thin it out, dry it out. We've had some stuff we put in new barrels in the past that we had to we thought, oh, this is going to be great for our best wines. And after time in barrel, it was clear we should have put it in a once or twice used barrel instead, which has less impact. So less good stuff, but also less risk of drying the wine out. The new barrels that we use now are about $1,200 each. So it's really tempting to just hang on to the old barrels and keep using them. And you know, fair enough, when we sell our barrels, our 3 times used barrels, it's often to another winery to use. So those get sold after 2 or 3 uses for $150, something like that. So the barrel has given away most of what it's got to give away by that time. So really kind of 2 things that we know, we being the wine world knows goes on in barrel. One is things come from the wood into the wines. So these barrels that we use are all oak. 99% of all the barrels used in the world for wine are oak, and certain species, and Sarah will get into that later, what kind of oak and where it grows and how fast there's oak is a whole 2-hour talk on itself. But it's so you get certain things from that oak that almost every barrel in the wine world is also, it's called toasted. So you think of a piece of toast, sort of lightly browned. There are people whose jobs their whole life has been barrel toaster, and some of them are really good and they're highly paid and they know how to get it. If you get burn it a little bit, you get bad taste. If you get a bubble in the wine in the barrel, the wine can hide in there and you can never clean it. And then there's all sorts. It's a real art in and of itself. So they're toasted, unlike a bourbon barrel, which is also usually made out of oak, but is charred to try to get like that would overwhelm a wine. but
Right.
that is the sort of bourbon or whiskey taste. So
Yeah. So the
there-
difference between those two things being a toasted barrel is just sort of warmed to the point that things start to kind of melt and you have chemical reactions going on at the end of the wood. A charred barrel is actually like slightly burnt on the whole inside.
Yeah.
So it just has a much different impact on the
Yeah.
wine. There you go.
And both are done by flame.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
one's
it's just
one's
the
I guess,
level of
closer
the
to the
level of
flame or
heat, I
something.
think. Yeah, how hot the flame is. Yeah.
And then the other thing a barrel does is it allows some air slowly to come in to the wine. And the new barrels allow a lot more
Mhm.
because the wine, they've got all these pores and things through it, and the wine will get in there and kind of plug it up. So by the time you've done 2 or 3 fills of the barrel, you're not only getting less of the barrel influence of things moving into the wine, but you're also getting less air coming into the barrel. So, and that can be good or bad, depending on, again, the strength of the wine. Too much air coming in can dry it out if it's not a strong user of air. So,
Right, depending on what you want, right, from the barrel. So there, yeah, that's the major. And then what the sort of impact of that the kind of micro oxygenation, the tiny bit of air impact that I talked about, is that it has a big impact on the tannins, in particular of the wine. It has a big impact on the wine development, but the biggest thing that it does is help to just kind of like smooth out and lengthen the tannins. And this is like the actual chemistry of it all. I don't understand perfectly, but basically tannin are these little molecules, and when they're young and small, your mouth can really perceive them. You can really feel them. And it's basically because the sense receptors in your mouth, it's like your sense receptors are like a little cup, and the tannin fits right into that cup. And so your sense receptors are like, woo, I totally got you, right? So as the tannins grow over time, and they need oxygen to do that. They need a little bit of oxygen to do that. As the chains kind of grow, your hand is here, come be my tannin molecule. Like they get too big, and then like it kind of just like slips over. I've never been able to do that because I've always done this talk by myself. Anyway, it gets too big, and so your mouth doesn't perceive it. So actually, as the tannin molecule gets bigger and bigger and bigger, your ability to perceive it actually gets smaller and smaller. And so in winemaking and in wine, whatever talking, we talk a lot about tannins kind of getting smoothed out or softening or becoming more slippery, and really they're just getting bigger, but the way they feel to us changes. So that's one of the kind of, see, you're just a little sense receptor.
That's me.
That's me
Adding value like always. That's me.
Come be my prop. So that's kind of the big, and this is like, oh, so I should talk about all the random things in your little kit, so we decided we didn't just want to send you wine because that would be boring. Not that wine is boring, but so the this, I guess this is our good time. You thought I'd let you drink wine now, but here's the time to talk about your tea bag and your tea. And the reason that we sent the tea bag home was, when I talk about tannin, I always try to say, hey, like just imagine like just a cup of tea, and you can actually suck on your tea bag or just drink the tea if you remember to make it early, and that it's just kind of tepid and overcooked, like what you feel from that tea. You're kind of like, oh, my sides of my mouth hurt, or just feel that dryness. That's tannin. It's really the exact same kind of like molecule as you've got going with the with oak or with grapes. The grapes have a lot of that naturally. And I guess if we took this tea and put it in an oak barrel for 2 years, I don't know. Well, I don't know, because you need all the other living stuff that's going on in wine to make it smooth out. But yeah. So we get that kind of softening and smoothing. So again, some of the exercises that we have when we play with the wines are going to look at like what is the impact of the barrel on the wine. I think we should get into tasting, because always I talk forever.
First.
No, I think we should let the people taste a little wine before we have a revolt, and then we should have warned you to bring a glass to drink, because we talk.
You're scared of a Zoom revolt?
I'm scared of a Zoom revolt. It's been a long week. I can't take it. I suppose we could. I want them to be excited when we talk about the charities. I don't want them to be like, could you get it done? All right. So let's start tasting. And again, you're at home, you can do whatever you want. We'll never know. But our suggestion is that you start, like the first thing we're going to do is taste two different clones of wine. So some of you, here they are, the two Merlots. So I have two bottles of Merlot in front of me, Merlot 181 and Merlot 300s. And Ed is going to tell you a little bit about clones.
I can tell you, before I tell you about
What we're
clones,
talking about.
I want to tell a little bit about why we're tasting those first.
Oh,
Because
good idea.
this is something we've learned a lot from Lucienne, our wonderful wine advisor. We're tasting Merlot first because we have a Cabernet Sauvignon, we have Cabernet Franc, and then we have a Cabernet Franc press wine. We'll talk about what press wines are a little bit later. We're tasting them in order of usually the least astringent, least aggressive to most aggressive wines, and so. The reason is your mouth gets tired doing this. Like each wine you drink affects the one after it. And so one of the reasons we have the cashews, I hope you have some water or something with you, is to try to refresh and clean your palate in between some of these wines. But if we start with a press wine, which is very strong and very tannic, your mouth is just too tired to move from there. One of the strange things that we learned from Lucienne is always do the white wines last. Mm-hmm. In a tasting like this, because the acidity of the white wines also affects your palate in ways that will mess up the red wine tasting for you if you do it first. So we always blend our reds, or we do them on a separate day. But if we're doing something on the same day, reds first, whites second.
Right. The white wines tend to tire your palate more than red wines, which is kind of surprising. We don't taste that way in the tasting room when we do a flight or when we did tastings, partly because people expect to taste white wines first, and partly because if you're just tasting 4 or 5, it's not a big issue. It's when you're tasting dozens and dozens of them that you start to really wear out your mouth with the white wines, and that you just kind of lose it for the reds. You don't have enough oomph left for them.
Yep. Okay, so clones. We're tasting the two wines we're tasting. One is called Merlot 181. One is called Merlot 300s. Those are such exciting names.
I know,
aren't they, everybody?
Fun, right?
So those are all of our pretty much all of the wine world. The wines come from grapevines that originated in Europe or the Asian border of Europe, far Eastern Europe, I guess, and that were bred for thousands of years to make better and better wines. So those are the ones that make the best wines, tend to all grow. And a clone, Merlot Merlot as a variety is all genetically exactly the same. So a grapevine, if you take a grape and planted it with its seeds in it, you'd get a grapevine that grew up. But if it were a Merlot grape that you planted, you would not get a Merlot vine. You would get something related to it, but it would not be the same. It's called they don't come true to seed, right? Like many plants do. The fruits tend not to. So what happens is if you want another Merlot, you have to actually take a cutting off that plant and put it in water or something and root it. And then when the roots come out, put it in the ground, and then it will grow from there, and you get an exact copy. But it turns out you don't get an exact copy doing that. And I don't really understand why, but there are different clones. They are genetically exactly the same, but they are different. We can see some of them have bigger clusters, some of them have smaller grapes, some of them ripen a little bit earlier, some of them grow a little faster, some of them
right, the vines will be looser, the seeds will be bigger, different things.
And that's physically in the vineyard. Most importantly, in the winery, there are clones that tend to be more aromatic, but maybe not as concentrated, and other ones that are big and concentrated but don't have much aroma, and there's subtle differences in at least in these varieties. They're somewhat subtle, but they make a difference. So we have 3 clones of Merlot planted. One is lovely name of 181. The other 2 are the lovely names of 343 and 347. They are all planted consecutively next to each other for the most part in the vineyard. So their soil and they're all facing west, pretty much all the same. And we tend to, because of the 343 and 347 tend to ripen at the same time and are kind of similar. We usually mix them in one tank and make one wine of them. So that's what you're tasting. Oh, Sarah's
All
got
right, here's my handy dandy map. So we're so proud of our map because it took us, 15 years to get done. So here it is showing up. And they are up if you go up the East Hill. So your right hand side if you're sitting in the tasting room looking out. They're about halfway up that kind of driveway on the left-hand side, yes.
Do you feel like the weather person trying to?
I do, right. Here's my green board, and there, it's up here, and the clouds are coming through. Anyway, so I am going to take a step back because I'm getting prompted by the people who are paying attention to the logistics. So how we would approach this. So everybody got this handy dandy little sheet. And again, you can do this as seriously as you want, but this is our thought. You can play along or you can just drink the wine and whatever. But so this is set up, and we set it up with the idea of how we approach when we're thinking about blending. So it's not necessarily how we approach a wine when we're just thinking about drinking it, but when we're sitting at the blending table, we're thinking about the wines kind of in a slightly different way than you might as just just trying to enjoy it. And we will sit down and taste. So when we go through blending, we will pull, as we talked here about these different clones, then we have different kinds of barrels, then we have different places in the vineyard. So we will, we might line up, on a normal blending session, we'll have 80 to 120 different wines that we're tasting. So it's not what it make for a really long day if we tried to give you all those. So you guys are getting like a little tiny sample. With seven is going to feel like a lot, I think, by the time we're done. But we'll taste through a whole lot. So we can't just taste them and just remember what they were all like, right? We're looking for very certain things for certain things, yeah. And this is kind of roughly, if you go along your little chart, like roughly the things that we're thinking about. So these may be.
And there was a question about, should we pour them in a glass? And I'm missing all the basics.
Sorry.
But yes, what we're doing is pouring a little bit. So this is what's left in the bottle. So we have more to blend later. If you don't want to pour it all into the glass, you can always pour it back into the bottle and use it later. But we're just pouring a little sample, enough that you can get in there and really smell it.
Not yet. But we're not there yet.
Oh, we're not allowed to. Oh, sorry. Whoops.
You can taste and smell if you want.
So
I'm still giving my lecture.
Yeah. So just that. Okay.
No, definitely. In fact, taste and smell, because this will all become much more interesting if you're tasting and smelling, or at least drinking. Okay, Greg, you're busted. You're in the penalty box because you already drank yours. So the idea, so things to look at, like how to do it. So aroma is just like, what does it smell like? Is it citrusy? Is it floral? Does it honestly, it's kind of like a psychological test. I feel like it's like what word just pops into your head. I feel like when we get into wine notes and tasting notes and all the crazy people are like hints of kumquat or whatever thought comes in your head is what it smells like to you. And it doesn't have to be what it smells like to somebody else, And sometimes there's power of suggestion. I'll say like, oh, I think this smells like pears. And then somebody else is like, oh, now I see it, or vice versa. And sometimes somebody smells something and I don't get it at all. It's just kind of your frame of reference, the smells, I was just reading some notes from Nadine Brown, who's a sommelier, who's a friend and worked at Charlie Palmer Farmer and Great. And she tells these stories. She'll describe a wine and she's like, you walk into your lake house and it's the last weekend of the season. And, and it's like all this whole poetry. I'm like, wow, this is just beautiful. It's a whole different way of approaching it. That's much fun. That's kind of a tangent. But what do you know? A tangent. But I guess the idea is like, as you're drinking wine to enjoy it, you can have all kinds of different things that it evokes for you. Here, we're trying to be like a little button down, I guess, as far as what we're looking for. So like aroma, like literally what are the smells that you get? And then the next,
Sarah's much better at that than I am. And I tend to just smell most of the wines and say, do I like it? And how intense is it? And by intense, it's almost, you could think of like, does it come out of the glass to meet you, or do you have to really stick your nose in there to smell it?
Right.
That's my measure of intensity. I want that aroma to come flying up out of the glass into my nose. And because I'm not very good at picking out black currants versus whatever. I don't have that nose.
Yeah,
So.
and for our purposes, we don't really care that much what those aromas are. It's kind of fun to have them. It is a question of, again, when we're thinking about blending, it's a question of, are they pleasant? Are they, how intense are they? How kind of consistent are they? And then we're almost gonna get to taste something. Once you drink it, like, do the aromas match what the wine tastes like? And that may seem obvious, and it's not always. And it is strange when you have a wine that either has not much aroma or a huge aroma or really smells like, just for whatever reason. Let's say it reminds you of cherries for whatever reason, and then you taste it and it tastes like leather. It just like I don't know what leather smells like, I guess, but or something different. Like it's that causes like a little bit of a jarring kind of disconnect in your brain. So it's not unforgivable in a wine, even as a blending element, but it means we just want to call that out for ourselves when we think about how to blend it. So if something has one aroma and a different flavor, we're going to want to kind of fix that when we mix it with other wines. So the second thing that we do is think about palate weight, and that's kind of just like, it's almost viscosity. It's like how rich or heavy does it feel in your mouth? And I mean, your best example of this, I feel like, is like, is it skim milk or is it cream? Like kind of how literally like how weighty is it?
Yeah, I think that's to me, that's a great example, because actually scientifically, I think the flavors of skim milk and cream are the same. Mm-hmm. But boy, everyone would say they taste different. Yeah. And it's because the feel is so different, and it's hard, usually don't separate those two things. You say it tastes different, but we have to try to, we want to try to very much separate that, because at Black Ankle, I think feel is our number one goal in our wines, and what Sarah said, what the tastes are is far number 2 or 3. Right. It's all about building a wine with good feel.
Yeah, and particularly as we get into what's going to end up as a Rolling Hills versus what's going to end up as a Crumbling Rock, we don't care at all if last year's Rolling Hills tasted like cherries and this year's tastes like tobacco and next year's tastes like, I don't know, give me a wine, pencils, blackcurrant, whatever. But we do care if they're kind of where they are on the skim milk to cream spectrum is the same year to year to year. So ideally that kind of feel of those wines, and it's kind of like the Crumbling Rock will always be a little more towards heavy cream, and the Rolling Hills will be a little bit more towards 2% milk. We're not going for skim milk for anything, really. No. But whole milk, all the way to whole milk. Yeah, so those are kind of the things that we're thinking of. Then tannin structure, we talked a little bit about tannin with your tea, and it's like, does it feel unpleasant? Is it drying? Does it feel kind of bitter or taste bitter? Is it smooth? Is it kind of round? Is it?
Yeah, an unripe tannin, or kind of astringent is a word they use. Mm-hmm. We use a lot with tannins. You can kind of feel it, but you can also feel it afterwards because your mouth feels dry. There's a coating on your mouth all the time that lets your tongue sort of slide around easily around your mouth. And an unripe tannin, or not quite perfect, I guess, tannin, mm-hmm. will tend to strip that coating. So then your tongue kind of feels like sandpaper around your mouth. So you can kind of feel it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the next thing we think about is palate consistency. And this is just like, if you put the wine in your mouth and you say, okay, at this point in terms of intensity, it's whatever your number is, it's a 4. I have a level of 4 intensity. Does it, as it spends time in your mouth, does it stay kind of 4-ish? Does it go down to a 2 and then up to a 7? Does it go, does it feel kind of the impact in your mouth? Does it stay relatively the same the time that it's in your mouth, or does it change a lot? And
and I'd say also after you swallow,
yeah, and then that's the next thing, right?
Is it doing this, or is it doing this?
Right. We talk about donut wines, which is kind of funny, where we say they have a hole in the middle, and it's kind of a strange phenomenon of a lot of wines, especially before you blend them, where you have a huge impact in the beginning. It's almost like you can't taste it for a second, and you can taste it, but it's like, it's just not so exciting for a little bit. And then you have a big impact at the end. And so that we call a donut wine, because it's got a hole in the middle. And then the last thing on here is finish. And finish is like just when you swallow what's left in your mouth, and kind of what does it consist of? What does it taste like? Is it a nice feel? And what does it feel like in your mouth? So do you have a drying feeling? Does it feel just like great in there? Is there a certain kind of aroma and flavor profile left in your mouth? And the last thing is length. And that is really just for how long after you swallow that wine, are you still experiencing any flavor in your mouth? Or like when you breathe, that you're kind of feeling aromas. So with all of that in mind, you guys have been so good. A whole half hour of prep. You get to taste the wine. It's like the marshmallow exercise where you have to right? You get 2 marshmallows if you can wait for a half hour to eat your first marshmallow. So it's
I don't know that one.
And it's a kid psychology thing. I'm so far off the topic. I won't get off it. So let's taste through the first wines. And then if you want, I mean, the little chart is here for fun. If you want to jot your notes, you can just, it can be like a thought, it can be like a number. I like it on a scale of 1 to 10. It can be whatever, just to kind of get a sense of the wines. I know, Greg, I'm sure you came armed with your own bottles. You knew that we'd blather on forever. If you've done our barrel tasting before, I make you stand in the freezing barrel cellar while I talk forever, and then you get to taste the works. Yeah, so let's taste through and think. And these are our little spittoons. We are going to spitter. This is like I always say, it's the only time it's polite to spit in public. You need it, you're home, but you can. Switch them up. You want to make notes? You can make notes. So we switched the wines, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now I have 300s. If anybody wants to chime into the chat with thoughts, go for it. You can't be wrong. It doesn't matter. Whatever you taste or smell is what's in there. So even though I always hate to have to talk about what I taste or smell, it's okay. Wait a minute. Oh yeah. No, have you tasted them both?
No.
Yeah, you're talking about the 300s. You had the.
I picked the one here.
Yeah, but I flipped them. That was the 300s, I think. You're tasting the 181 now. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, no, I haven't tasted the second one yet.
I know, but it's in. You're the wrong now.
Oh,
okay. It's okay.
It's okay.
I think we each got our own paper. Here's why. Marital strife. You're tasting in the wrong order.
So Greg says he tastes cranberry in the 181 clone. Susan said she gets that unripe thing that Ed explained.
Got black cherries out of the 181.
Yeah. How about, so now that people have tasted through both of them, does anybody have a impression of kind of the length of one or the other? Like the, well, I guess we should go through, so we've talked about some of the aromas and flavors. How about like consistency of palate weight? Any differences? Do you feel like there's some differences in them? Have you tasted them both? I had the 181 was much bigger wine overall. That's my sense of it. Which order are you in? Yeah. I thought its intensity was bigger, and I thought its finish was much longer. I just felt like it kind of went on for a long time. So I'm gonna go back and taste it again. The 300 feels heavier, Greg. Yeah, what did you thought?
Yeah, I'm let's see. So we should have also talked about one of the things you're going to get from a wine that's been in barrel only a few months is that what we've talked about, that tannin kind of. I'm getting that grippiness out of both of these, kind of the puckeriness because they're young out of barrels. One of the things that it's been so hard, or not hard, but when Sarah and I started this, we had drunk a lot of wine. We liked wine. That was part of what got us hooked into doing this as a business. But you only get to drink finished wine. Learning to drink half finished or quarter finished or 3/4 finished wine and figure out where it's going to be is tough. And
Yeah.
so we've been at this a bunch of years now. And so now I know, like, these wines, and if this were next year and we had these wines on the table, I'd be disappointed, because
Oh, yeah, because they'll soften up a lot.
the,
Yeah.
the tannins are rougher and more astringent than they should be. But that's the point of that next year of,
Right.
of barrel aging, is that it should soften up really nicely. So with
Oh,
that,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
to me, I started with the 300s. I think is what I had first. Right?
Yeah.
So it had really nice intensity. I thought on the nose,
Mhm.
it kind of leapt out at me. The tannin structure is a little better. It's less astringent at this, and that's been our experience with that block. That wine in the past. These two fit almost exactly my
Right, their history, yeah.
impression of what these blocks would look like.
What do you know? They match your
What do you
preconceived
know?
notions.
Yeah, there you go.
Never happens.
We'll see how it happens, but the 181 tends to be bigger,
Right.
but not quite as interesting. The 300s
Yeah,
tend
yeah.
to be better tannin structure, more intensity on the nose. Kind of often, if only one of them gets into the higher level wines, it's the 300. It's more of the 300s. There's usually
Right.
some in everything, but the 300s tend to give us a wine that we think of more as what we're trying to do for our crumbling rock or an estate. The 181 a little less of that. So and this, but I don't know, I'm pretty happy with both of them.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, again, for super young wine, so it is kind of fun to see where they are. So should we move on to the cab soaps?
Let's do
All
it.
right, and so this brings us while Ed's pouring the wine. And so same thing, we're just taking a little bit now, because you guys are gonna have to make your own blends later. So we're okay. So Susan and Gary, it sounds like somebody felt like it was floral and somebody didn't. Yeah, I felt like the fruit was much more intense on the 181. Like the overall impression to me was much bigger, but it had a pretty hard finish still. So this brings us up to the next little weird thing on your packet, your little mini jar of cashews. And this is half useful and kind of half of a joke, because people ask me, like, well, for wine pairing, and I always say, oh, all our wines pair best with cashews, which is not really how you're necessarily going to drink them. But we always, for whatever reason, we got in the habit at our tasting table, people talk about crackers or water or whatever. So water just kind of strips your mouth more. It's not to say you shouldn't drink water, because you need to stay hydrated, because even though we spit the whole time, you're absorbing a little wine. But the cashews are really good because they have some fat in them. So Ed talked about the kind of coating in your mouth, and the coating in your mouth is basically like a little bit of a fat coating. And I don't know if that's like scientifically correct, but it's like a kind of a protective coating, and the little bit of like fattiness in the nuts can really help restore that. It's one of the reasons that the stripping of that is one of the reasons that wine can make food taste so much better when you're eating drinking wine with a meal, which is that when our mouth is kind of fresh, we taste the food the most. You have the biggest impact from your food. Like your first bite of something usually has this biggest impact. And if you keep eating and eating, your mouth gets kind of immune to that. And it's partly because it's like my little sense receptors, like it gets kind of coated and full, and your mouth can't experience it as much anymore. When you take a sip of wine, some of that astringency and acidity that's in the wine, when it's in the right balance, but well, whether it is or not, it starts to strip that off your mouth. It kind of cleans out your mouth, and it'll make the next taste of food better. So that's kind of the magic of wine. But when you're tasting wine after wine and you don't have any food in there, it starts to just feel raw. You start to lose a lot of the interest in the wine. So we often end up snacking. Well, we snack on cashews like all the time, everywhere. But for whatever reason, they've become our go-to. So like it, whether we try or not, all of our wines are going to pair well with cashews, because that's always how we're tasting them.
As my friend Joe calls them, the champagne of nuts.
They're great.
Champagne
Yeah.
of
So
nuts.
there you go. So there's a little snack. I hope there were no nut allergies out there and nobody was horrified, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So on to Cab Sauv.
On to Cab Sauv. And let's taste them. The Cab Sauv should be different than the Merlots. They always are. So
Hmm.
let's see what you guys think.
Two Cab Sauv. We
yeah, we
have
got
two of
nice
the
labels.
same one. Oh, they're just labeled wrong.
Well, I don't know. We'll have to
Okay,
taste
so
them.
you should have, we'll have to see if we got them right. So you should have in your pack something that says Cab Sauv Mezcla, which just means mix. It means it's a mix of the different areas of Cab Sauv on the farm. And one should be in an Orion barrel and one should be in a Michel barrel. So it should say new Orion or new Michel.
So
And
yeah,
so this is about the impact of the barrel. And so we work with, one of the things we're always going for is complexity. We just want to have and it's, again, when we think of blending, and we talked about how we might have 80 or 100 different wines that we taste through the blend, we want to have a lot of, I always say tools in my toolbox, but we want to have like ingredients in the cupboard for our blends. And one of the things we could do is work with different coopers, meaning barrel makers, and have put the same wine into different barrels and see what the barrel impact is going to be.
Yep.
So
and it really does make a difference.
it can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Did you try these too?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. You have the Orion on
I
the
have the
left
Orion,
and the Michel
On the right.
on the right. And so the Michel barrel is the only barrel we use that's not totally French oak. It's something like 80-85% French oak. The rest is oak from Switzerland, Germany, Austria. There's a forest somewhere in there. And one of their specialties is figuring out how to work with that oak. And for whatever reason, it seems to pair really well with our wines. We've gravitated to buying some of those, which is nice.
And then I have the Orion barrel.
Orion.
The Michel, yeah.
Yep.
So again, just taste them side by side and see what your impressions are. And it's not necessarily trying to pick which one's better. It's just what is the impact that's different? How are they affecting the wines differently? That's interesting. Yeah. Wow.
Really different.
So one little hint before we talk about the substance of these, as always, things I should have told you before. Many of you will know this already, but one kind of a hint for tasting wines, especially when you're tasting them in order like this, a whole bunch of wine. It doesn't really matter like how much you smell or how long the wine stays in your mouth or whether you swish it around, or you can choose whatever of those things makes you comfortable or where you feel like you have the most impact on it. Should you go like and swish air over your wine? There's lots of different ways to taste a wine. The best thing you can do though is like kind of figure out what works for you and then just try to do the same thing every time. Because the impact of the wine, like whether you just pop it in your mouth and swallow it, or if you swish it around, or if you like, remember Lance would always be like, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
For like a half hour. Like, okay, go for it. If that's your jam, go for it. But do the same thing every time,
Yeah.
which he did.
Yeah.
I was like, he's gonna choke, So anyway, so whatever, and it will just mean that you kind of are giving, it's like leveling the playing field on the wines. It means the wine will have the most consistent impact so that you can compare wines. Because if you taste one wine with like the crazy like slurping thing, and then the next one you just swallow, and the other one you swish your mouth down to your cheeks, like each one of those is going to feel different. Your impressions of their differences is going to be more about their journey through your mouth than what the wine itself. So, how many different coopers do we work with? We have probably worked with 6, 7. Most years we get barrels from 2 or 3, maybe 4 different coopers. It depends. Even some of the same coopers have different styles of barrels. So sometimes we'll get like these Michel guys, they make a couple of different types of barrels. So we'll get some of each of those. But yeah, it depends. And we have different over the years, there are different coopers that we've liked, like some barrels we've loved for a while, and then all of a sudden they don't seem to go jive for us as much anymore. We've shifted around a little bit. The Mikels we've only introduced to probably 5 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
It's a relatively new Cooper,
Relatively new.
and we've really loved their barrels. So we've been using a lot of those. But every year we have at least, I would say every wine goes into at least 4 different kinds of barrels, like an older barrel and at least 3 new Coopers, maybe 4.
Yeah.
So we really do have for every clone where possible. I mean, Pinot Noir in a big year we make 3 barrels of it. So like they always go into all, they're not going into 4 different barrels because we don't have, so it kind of depends on the wine, but where we can, where we have a bigger
All
production.
right.
All right, you want to talk about, anybody want to throw out thoughts on any of our topics on the wines? Otherwise, Ed, I'll tell you what you got.
All right, cool. I guess the first thing I want to talk about is how different these Cab Sauves are than the Merlots
Yeah.
to me. I mean, I think 2020 is going to go down as a Cab Sauv year. I prefer both of these wines to the other two. The Merlots are going to be nice too, but when we get Cab Sauv right, it is so good. And what Cab Sauv tends to do, and I think it here, is it has much more length than the other varieties. It just lasts for a long, long time. So if you're trying to get a wine that has a great finish and keeps going for a long time, it's hard to do it without a Bordeaux blend anyway, without Cab Sauv in it. So this, I love the length of both of these wines. What Cab Sauv often doesn't do very well is the upfront part of the palate. And so blending with Merlot, we might get there a little later. It kind of they fill in each other, and they do really well together. There's a comment that it feels more mature, and I think that's right. It's absorbing these barrels really well.
And that is in part because it is a bigger wine going in. So it was it had more heft, it had more tannin, it had more structure, it had kind of more going on, going in. And because of that, the barrel is less sort of aggressively evident. So these wines have been in barrel. Actually, the Cab Sauv's been in a little bit less because we pick it later, but by a matter of weeks, less time rather. But they've been in barrel roughly the same amount of time. But you see that the barrel is still kind of overwhelming the Merlot a little bit more. And the Merlot, it's also really interesting. So the Merlot was in used barrels. They were both in older barrels. I think somebody asked, was it in a Miquel barrel? It could have been. I didn't even look because by the time the barrels are neutral, which means they've been used 2 or 3 times, the differences among the barrels really fade. It doesn't make a tremendous difference. So, and I chose older barrels because I wanted to try to highlight the differences in the clones and not have the kind of barreliness standing out as much. So it is interesting how, how much more you're still getting the barrel impact, even though you're having kind of a lesser barrel, I guess, as far as the age. I mean, an older barrel, which means it should have less impact on the wine at that point. Yeah. Does anybody have a preference? If you were buying the barrels, would you choose one or the other? I'm gonna look to the screen.
These barrels are so different.
They're really different. Yeah, they really are different.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump in and talk about these barrels. So the first one I tried was the Orion, and the second the Miquel. The Orion, to me, right now, there's a much bigger barrel impact. I can smell more wood, a little bit more toast on the wine. We hope that fades over time because we don't want very much of that in our wine. We want our wines to taste like Black Ankle, not like some oak from somewhere else. So we're trying to get barrels that help sort of lift the wine without leaving much of an impact on aromas or flavors and things. To me, the Miquel has very little impact on the nose. Everything I smell comes from a grape. And there's very little thing that I smell comes from wood. So that, sorry, I skipped over that. Some of the things that come from wood are the sort of obvious ones where you smell like actual wood. But vanilla, butterscotch, is a bunch of those kind of family of aromas and flavors.
Bread in any form, like bread, yeast, toast, dough, all those things are.
Yeah, they don't come from grapes.
Yeah,
they come from barrels. So we're trying to sort of minimize those. The other thing I noticed between these two, both on the nose and especially on the palate, that the Orion palate was really nice. The nose is really nice, but it's a little bit narrowed. And on the Miquel barrel, and it's hard to describe. It took me years to learn this in a
Right,
way,
to feel it.
but like it's much broader. The wine feels like it goes into my mouth and just kind of broadens out.
So bright.
And it broadens out.
It's green.
Broadens
All
out.
right, it's
And
on
so
you.
it and I think what's happening is something in the Orion wood is sort of clipping the wine. It's narrowing. The
tightening
wine
it up
is,
a little bit, right.
and the Orion is not doing that. So this is why
Yeah.
we started loving these barrels in the first place. Is they seem to have what would the French say, more respect for the
Right.
wine than the other barrel. Not to say the one in the Orion is bad at all. It's really good, and it might be wonderful as a spice rack in the final blends.
Right.
But if I had to pick one,
We're
10
fans of
out
it,
of 10 for me, it would be the Mikkel.
Yeah. And again, this is one of those things where you're tasting, and taste is very personal. So like I might like one thing better than you like, or vice versa. And that doesn't mean I'm right or not right. It's like you can like the Orion better because you like those flavors that it gave you, or the impact it had on your mouth, or the smoothness of it, or you might like the Mikkel better because you feel like the wine is showing more. So again, there's no kind of right answer on which one's better. It's just like, what's your impression and what resonated with you and what kind of felt good when you tried it. And again, these are all just like trying to keep them in the back of your mind when we're playing with the wines to say like, okay, how might we mix and match these to put together something that's better after.
And I'm also already thinking,
I
maybe
know,
a little
I
of this and a little
know,
that
I
goes
know.
here. It's gonna be fun.
And in general, we should start. So if you have a third glass, bring it out because it is fun to try these all in a row. And we're going to move to the Cab Francs. And I will say, because I always have to talk about Merlot versus Cab Sauv, I don't feel like this Merlot was super lush, but it's pretty much on the lush. That Lucien, our consultant, this is probably not even appropriate anymore in the current world. But he says that Merlot is like, it's like the women that you just want to date, and it's just like very lush and available right away. And that the Cab Sauv is the one you bring home to mama because she's for the long haul. It's like, and it's ridiculous. And maybe I'm gonna have to stop telling that story. That was kind of funny. But the Merlot is like very like often in general when we go to blend, the Merlot is like you get the first impression of it. It tends to be very rich and kind of available up front. And but maybe it doesn't have as long of an impression on you, whereas the Cab Sauv might be like a little more reserved in terms of its first impression, but it tends to last and linger a little bit longer. We might have to come up with a new analogy for modern day.
Might have to do
But
that.
anyway, it's kind of funny when he says it. But
Being French.
being French, right?
So and I'm really happy too about that Cab Sauv. That is for those of you who go to lots of other local vineyards in Virginia or Maryland, Cab Sauv is really, really hard to grow and make into really good wine. I would say most wineries now that are growing it, or vineyards that are growing it, are either not planting more or pulling it out and planting something else because they're having such trouble with it. Our soils at Black Ankle seem to be magic with Cab Sauv.
So we're basically showing off that we can do Cab Sauv. We're just woofing that we could do Cab Sauv, but it did taste good, so we're taking it. Yeah. All right, so Cabernet Franc. So the CF is Cabernet Franc. Joven just means young. So lingua franca of Black Ankle is Spanglish. We speak a lot of mix of English and Spanish, and somehow I built a language that our vineyard crew and we usually can communicate in. And so this just means that it's our younger block of Cabernet Franc. So it will be, where's my handy dandy map? The Cab Franc Joven is mostly on the West Hill, right? It's over here. Yeah. So if you're in the tasting room and you're going out the right-hand side, you're facing down the farm, the right-hand side is the West Hill, and the Cab Franc kind of runs along here. It was planted in 2011, most of it. So as opposed to the Cab Franc Viejo, which was planted in 2003. So that's what all the little words on your label means. And the sort of three things that we're comparing in this little exercise we have a kind of a three-way comparison. The used is a used barrel. So these are the exact same wine, the kind of three different iterations of it. So one just was put in a used barrel. The second one was put in a new Orion barrel. So you've tasted an Orion, you have a little bit of a sense of what the Orion kind of flavor profile is like. And then this is the Cabernet Franc in that barrel. And then the last one is prensa means press, so it's the pressed wine. And do you want to talk about what that means? Have you
Yeah,
tasted it?
no, but I'll taste this last one.
Okay.
And you,
Well, then I can talk about press wine. Yeah. Okay. So when we bring the fruit in, oh, you're going to talk about press wine. He's done tasting. I'll just leave the place in jar.
okay. Right,
Okay.
now you
I'll
taste
you
all.
and I can taste. Okay.
So
great.
press wine. So yeah, we have a Cabernet Franc in a used barrel and a new barrel from the same block, and then we have the press wine. So when we
Ooh.
bring a red grapes in, we take the stems off, and then we load them into the tank. All the skins, the seeds, the juice, everything together goes into the tank. The juice is clear, so all of the color, and the juice has essentially no tannin in it. So you could, if you separated it right away, you could make a white wine out of Cabernet Franc or
Right.
Cabernet Sauvignon or whatever. If you separate it slightly an hour or two or whatever, or if it's really ripe and that means you can't separate it immediately, you make a rosé out of it. So if you want to make a red wine, you have to ferment it with the skins, with the seeds, so that it starts to develop color and tannic backbone. So when you do that, we've got to have this whole mess of grapes and juice in a tank, and we're trying to mix it all the time and make sure the juice absorbs as much as the good stuff from the grapes as we can without absorbing the astringent stuff or anything. And then when we think it's done, it's been in there long enough. Usually that for us, it's about a month or so in the tank. We say, okay, it's time. It's starting to get starting to absorb some of the things we don't want from the skins. So we open the valve and we let the wine run off. It's called the free run. So everything else you've tasted so far is from free run. Just let the tank valve open and everything that gravity can pull out. Then you're left with this soupy mass of skins, and we have to open the door and shovel it out into a bin and put it into our press. And that, when we press it, when you squeeze and squeeze, you squeeze the last 15%-ish of the juice out, and that's called a press wine. And we keep that separately. We never blend that back immediately. Sometimes it'll get into different wines eventually, but for the first 18 months or so, it is kept separately. And so press wine is very different. We can
And
talk about that.
it's showing in this example, I would say. Yeah.
So,
Oh, goodbye, Jim. Sorry, have fun at Shakespeare. Wow, this is a good jump back to be in front of, I guess. I guess we're not following. So these wines, I would say these show very differently. It's interesting. So I don't know if anybody wants to throw out impressions or thoughts, or we'll just plow in. I feel like this Cabernet Franc is showing its kind of a green pepperiness that's kind of common, and even more peppercorn than like bell pepper, but you get kind of like a pepperiness on it. And it's nice. It's got a lot of richness to it. I think the new barrel, it shows really evidently. The older barrel. The new barrel, I feel like even though you're getting a little bit of barrelness, I feel like it smooths it out really well. So I really love that Orion barrel. I think it's it's kind of softening the little bit of harshness that I feel like I got in the first one, but and then adding kind of some richness from the barrel. And then the third one, I feel like really you just get kind of like the lusciousness of it. And it's funny because often the press wines are really tannic, but this, I'm not getting too much tannin. I think it's lovely. I like the press. I like a little tannin in my life. So yeah, I like a little tap in my life. So
yeah, it definitely needs. They all need time. I love the weight of all three of these wines. These to me seem the most concentrated of these three wines. Remember at Harvest, we thought this is going to be a year for the Cabernets, and that's what it feels like to me. The Franc has wonderful weight. It's not as long as the Cab Sauv, and it's not as
kind of pretty good.
But it's
got a lot of heft.
It's going to add a lot to whatever blend we come up with, and the press wine. I mean, Lucien is always surprised. He says our press wines are good for some reason.
Yeah.
He always expects them to be worse, but it still is a little bit.
It's a little jam.
It's a little tough.
I needed a cashew. That's the indication. How many cashews per glass?
Yeah, and it's a little. I feel like the press wine is doing a little this in my
Yeah.
the palate consistency is a little more this that kind of thing is normal. The press wines tend to have like really good things about them, but they are never perfect. They always have something.
It's kind of a fun.
Yeah, and so for those of you who tried a lot of Black Ankle wines over the years, the press wines tend to end up in Slate and
Feldspar.
Because that's a style that we've made. It's a style decision to make slightly different kinds of wine, and we tend to get there's a little more richness, a little bit more heft, but a little less length and a little less finesse, I guess, than in some of the free runs. So,
and we allow for a little more tannin. We'll let those wines be a little more tannin. For sure. Often those press wines, though, before they get into those wines, we'll spend an extra year in barrel.
Yeah.
So not always. It kind of depends on the year and what they're like, but we talked about kind of the impact of the barrel and what it does and how it softens the wine over time, especially with the kind of harsher finish or heavy tannin, and time. It really makes a huge difference on that. Mm-hmm. So a wine, and I wouldn't say this is in this category. I think this wine will probably be ready to bottle next year, guessing based on how it tastes now, how it will taste in a year. But sometimes if they're really kind of like over the top at this point, we would just say, okay, an extra year in barrel. When we get to the blending table, we'll just hang on to it. And that extra year can make a huge impact on the wine. So you have this kind of bigness from the richer wine, but you give it time to soften out. And time and bottle will continue to do that too. Yeah. So we almost always put our press wine into used barrels. We have once in a while put it in a new barrel, and we found that it doesn't get a lot out of a new barrel, and we're better off putting in used barrels. So generally they tend to stay in the used barrels.
And I think you made a good call that especially you can taste in the used barrel, there's a little bit of that, greenness or something in the wine. It's a controversial thing in the wine world is how much of that do you want in a wine? For years, the Californians said, we want none of that in any of the wines. And the French have always said, no, you want some herbaceousness, they call it. You want some, you get too much, it's bad, but a little bit is complexity. And I think we like a little bit in the wines because we think it makes the wine more interesting.
Yeah.
They get a little boring when they have none. And so this is going to be a great blending component because the Merlot has none and the Cab Sauv has none. If we have a little bit of this.
You get a little bit of that. You can, and it's like adding spice to your food. And I think that little touch of herbaceousness, as we're calling it, as it's called, I think it especially is nice when you're drinking your wine with food, because it does tend to balance out like the richness and the kind of fattiness or even slight sweetness in a lot of the food that we eat. That just kind of tends to complement that in a way that lets the wine complement the food and add to the food rather than kind of compete with it. So I think that is something that's nice.
And it's a reason we haven't talked about this a lot. It's the blending seminar, and our philosophy at Black Ankles, we do a lot of blending. Blending is really important to us. We've never made a Cab Franc. We've never made a Merlot. We've never made a Cab Sauv. I'll never say never, but we probably won't either, because when we taste these wines, we say, okay, that Cab Franc, if we bottled that exactly, it would be a really nice wine. It might be a little too herbaceous for what we like. But if we blend a little of that into the Merlot, and then the Merlot goes here, and then we can build a wine that we think is way better than any of them individually. And that's what we do. So that's what you guys get to try today.
And that is, it's particularly true of these Bordeaux varieties. So all the wines that we tasted today are the traditional grapes traditionally grown in Bordeaux. And I don't know, I guess it's the reason that they grow so many different grapes, whereas say Syrah tends to stand better on its own. Like we will make a varietal Syrah, we will make a varietal Pinot Noir. The white wines are almost all varietals, where we have only one wine in the blend, or not a blend then, I guess, in the tank or in the bottle. But something about these wines, they just tend to have these amazing characteristics, but they're kind of missing something that is filled in by their counterparts. So.
And some of that too is climate. I mean, in drier, warmer climates, some of these grapes, you can make a Merlot, which is pretty complete usually.
Yeah.
I don't love some of those wines as much, but they certainly can make a varietal wine that is better, more consistent than we could. And so in
Because
for
the
us,
weather is more
because the
consistent.
weather's more consistent, yeah, and especially at harvest. Some years it rains early and it's nice late, and then Merlot ripens early in the rain, but the Cab Sauv, which is picked late, has a chance to dry out and is beautiful and gets 2 weeks of sun, and so yeah, it so many factors go into it, and we can sort of roll with those punches if we blend, and that's why we do it.
Yeah.
Why
All
we do it.
right, should we play with some blends? How's everybody doing? Ready to blend? Okay, so should I have a commercial interruption and talk about our charities?
Oh yeah.
I could do. You have to go pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Are you good? It's
In a few
6:05.
minutes.
Okay, so well, maybe we should keep you for the first blend. I can do quick commercial interruption when you're done.
It's up to you.
All right, let's talk about blending first. Let's do a blend. Let's do one blend exercise together, and then maybe we'll do our breakout rooms. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, that's the plan. No, I forgot. Zoe, I'm totally off script. How am I doing on our plan? We had a plan, but how did I do? Oh,
You're doing great.
okay. I'm like I just read it. That looks about right. All right. So when we, let's see, I mean, we don't have all of our components. We don't, we just have to think. So we can just approach blending by
This is the tool
your
of blending.
little pipette. This is when you feel like a real winemaker, right? You get to open your little jobby. So we will often try to say like, okay, how do we make, like, I think we would have a goal, and it's tough with this small number of choices, but like, how can we make 2 wines? What is the best way we can split these in? This is going to be our goal. How do we make a Crumbling Rock and a Rolling Hills out of these wines? Can we do it? And the answer may be like, we'll have to see, right? I think that's where we would start. I mean, often a first exercise would be to put everything together and see where that gets us. I mean, if you were thinking 7 wines. So if we want to go kind of, I guess the simplest approach, I might just take like, hey, let's take equal parts of each of these wines, put them together, and then see how that tastes. And then we can start to peel back, start to pull some wines out. Another approach, if you wanted to do it, would be like, hey, let's take our 3 favorites and our 4 least favorites, or vice versa, mix and match them, and then see kind of how we come out. So you want to try to do 2 different wines first, or you want to just start with everything together?
Let's start with the everything.
All right, we're gonna do the everything together. So pick an amount, however many milliliters you want to do.
I picked 5 milliliters.
All right, Ed's got 5 milliliters, and we're just gonna put 5 milliliters of everything into. So we're gonna start with 5 milliliters of everything into 1 glass. So the back side of your little handy dandy chart. Now, if you take in your notes here, you can flip over. I mean, this one you don't necessarily have to do it because we're just going to do the equal percentages, but you can. So our thought was on this page. This is the back of the little sheet. Was just to put down what percentage of the wine you have in each blend. So where did I put my little pipette? Oh, here, I'm going to take it. So how to use a pipette. First, take it out of the package. Oops. I opened it and then Ed stole it. And I have to open this one. Doesn't want to open. I wonder you stole mine. You were really good. You would have opened them first. Anyway, I'll get there. So you basically can kind of treat it like a straw. It depends on how. Oh, they don't fit in the bottle. Oops. Whoops. Sorry. You're going to have to pour them into a glass first. That was a little bit. I just thought of that. I was like, well, you can tip it. You can tip your bottle. Watch this. Maybe. No? Will it work? Oh, very well. Sorry. You're going to have to. Oh, whoops. That was a little technical error that the pipettes don't fit into our little bottles. We usually use bigger bottles. Doesn't work at all. All right. Pour it into a glass. Sorry. Get a little bonus. So pour your wine into a glass, some sample, and then you can just take I'm doing the demo on how to use the pipette.
Okay.
Get your own wine. All right. So put it in here. It's a good thing, Greg. It's a good thing I have 52 wine left. Exactly. And then you can just kind of suck on it like a straw. And then literally it's just like your finger on the top and you can just measure down how much is left. So you figure out how much of this you needed 5 mils. Oops.
It's one of those skills
There we
as,
go.
as a winemaker.
Is it this one?
You get
Is
really
this
good
the
at these
this is the
bizarre
blending
little
glass?
little skills like drawing wine up into a pipette or
Letting it out
Or,
drop by drop. Yeah.
siphoning. You do a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
siphoning in the winery, siphoning one from one to the next. And yeah, I never thought I would be an
All right.
expert siphoner, but
And you can just pour it right back if you need, because yeah, we just that's kind of botch that. It's okay. You also get good at pouring wine back into a very small bottle without dripping too much. All right. So that's got this in it. So everybody put it in and we'll just talk about our impressions. Yeah, if you sorry that our pipettes don't fit into your bottle. You can use any kind of glass. It's just to get to your pipette will work. So you can use a wine glass, you can use a teacup, you can use what is that? Oh, I'm putting this back. Okay. You can use anything you want to use to transfer. Top tip, we'll make sure these match. Maybe next year we'll be live.
and we do spend an inordinate amount of time at blending trying to make sure we can keep track of what's in what glass. And our favorite tool is the Sharpie. We just write on the base of the glass what's in it, because otherwise we have so many glasses running around, we forget what's in what, and we always forget anyway somehow. But the Sharpie helps.
Yep.
So,
what do you need? The Merlot. The 300s?
Both of them. Yeah.
This one you just did, didn't you?
Nope.
I just put it back in this.
Yeah.
Yep. No, what is this? This
Let's put this one.
all right, that's good. All right, we're good. I think I might have actually just made a little field blend here. Shoot, you have to pay attention to what you're doing or you blend the wine the wrong way. It'll be fine.
Okay, so
It's not
pour some
much.
in that glass.
Oh, this is going in here.
You know what we should do? Well, we can line up 7 glasses.
Oh, we could. Oh, that is a good idea. Oh, I got a few more glasses. Then we just have them lined up.
Okay, now
You got the blend?
I've got a blend, should be about 35 milliliters.
Oh, right, it's
Uh,
like that.
And
Oh, sorry. Oh,
if you want to mix it, just suck some up into the pipette.
You gotta
and
come
then
on camera,
oh,
sorry.
And then just blow it right back in. So
There you go. So way to mix. Or you can swirl it around, Bob. Yeah.
all right, the everything burger.
This is the everything. Does everybody have their everything's ready?
Hmm.
Everybody's got it? What do you think?
All right, try it. See what you think. Sometimes we we do these blends sometimes 2 different ways. This one we're putting everything together, and then I think Lisa and I are going to then start subtracting things
Pulling
out.
things out, yeah.
Sometimes we start the other way. We pull some things we think are going to work well together, and when we say, well, we're missing this or we have a little too much of that, and we start adding things to it, and then maybe pull some out at the end. This is, yeah. There's no right answer.
Thoughts? Have everybody tasted it? I'll give you a minute.
Oh, I gotta go.
You gotta go. Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.
It's all me now.
Keep Sarah honest.
Oh, yeah. All right.
All right.
Just taking over the whole space. All right. Wow. Now I get to decide the wine. All right. What do people think? All right, Greg, you liked it. Any other thoughts? I am going to say, I feel like the Cabernet Franc is overwhelming this wine to me. My next blend, I'm going to pull out a little less. Cabernet Franc. Yeah, heavy on the tannins. I think all these wines are going to feel a little heavy on the tannins because they're so young. But yes, and I think the pepperiness, of it is kind of enhancing that. So when we go back to blend, I think we want to think of like what were the the wines that felt a little softer as far as the tannin situation. And then maybe we up those numbers. So I think we're to the point where we should pop out and let you guys play with the wines a little bit. Do you want to do one more iteration together? Or I would say let's break into a few breakout rooms and you guys can chit chat among yourselves and make a couple blends and then we'll come back. How does everybody feel about that? All right, nobody can answer. So we're going to go with yes. All right. So Zoe, can you send us, I see 38 people in here. So I think 3 of them are kind of the 3 of us. So 35 people. How many, what if we did like, 35. What if we did 5, 7 times 5, right? What if we did 5 breakout rooms, so 7 groups? Is that crazy?
All right, 1 sec. I'll start putting everyone in them, okay?
Yeah. So, all right, we're going to send you out to the breakout rooms. I'm going to pop around. We'll probably do like 10 minutes of breakout just for fun. So make your blends. And I guess the idea is with this in mind, like what would you like more of or what would you like less of in the wine? And then make a few mixes. And you don't have to have the same amount of each wine. So, you can have 20 parts of one and 4 parts of another or whatever you think. And you can just do that by the number of milliliters you put of any one thing. So you guys could even decide like, hey, one person is going to make this blend, one person's going to make that, and then report back to each other and see what you think. So we'll do that. So
And 0 parts.
And 0 parts of some. Yeah. Or do you want to do it? We can do it all together if people don't want to break out. I don't know. I got 1 vote against, but otherwise, people are going to have to chime in. Otherwise, we're going to send you to breakouts. And we can just do it for a short time. I just think it'll be kind of fun because people will be more willing to talk about what they're doing if they're kind of shared.
1 sec.
And if it's not working, so we'll just skip it.
No, it's good. I just have to assign folks.
Okay, so she's going to shoot you off. You're just going to suddenly you just appear in the other room, right?
Yeah, so
You
what
just
you
have
guys are going to
people-
see is it is going to ask you to join it, and you're just going to leave. And then, the oak chips. That's right.
I'm going to talk about the chips for a second. So the chips, these again, they're just kind of for fun and exercise. This isn't really something we use much of, these little oak chips, but we do use them once in a while. And there are 2 kinds of chips in your little jar. There are the ones that look kind of red. You're not going to be able to tell the difference on the camera, but I think when you're looking up close, and the ones that just look black. The red ones have been soaked in wine, and I put them in, and the brown ones have it, just so you get a little bit of a sense of like, what is a barrel like before you use it, and what is a barrel like after you use it. And it's just partly, you can lick them and just see how they taste, to see what the difference is. You can just get a sense of what a barrel does. You could throw a few chips if you were like, hey, I want a little more oakiness. You could throw them in your wine. You don't have enough time to really have it have a big impact, but you can play with it. Be careful not to choke on it when you drink it afterwards. Again, yeah, they're more here just to kind of get a sample of like what the impact is like once the wine, like what is the wine taken out of a barrel versus before. So anyway, I just thought they were kind of fun to play with. And yeah, you can throw them in your blends and see what they do. If you want more tannin, again, we wouldn't really make the wine this way, but we have a limited toolbox here, right? So if you, and I don't know that we would, if you want a wine that has more tannin, like you could put a little of your tea in there. It'll thin out the wine in a way and just add tannin, but you'd see what the impact is, So all of these things are just here to kind of play with and just kind of see what they're doing to the wine. So Zoe, you've got to set up, right? All right. So we're going to spend just the next few minutes just pop it into our breakout rooms, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the wines a little more, and I'll talk about the charities and other stuff then. And if you have any questions or thoughts, just shoot them our way, and we'll be here for that.
All right, so I'm going to open up the rooms, and everyone's going to be able to click join, and then once we're ready to all come back together, you'll see a warning that it's like come back to the meeting in 30 seconds. And then you just come back into the regular meeting.
Right. And I think you just bring them back. Like if you do nothing, you're just going to end up back in the big meeting. This is our first big busting out into break rooms. I know everyone who does Zoom all the time in life probably knows how to do all this, but this is our first time having to do it.
All right, here we go.
All right. See you, everybody. I'll come to Zoom.
All right, there you go. Folks are starting to join.
They're going. There we go.
Yep.
I'll jump in and out of them too, just to talk.
Okay, great.
See, and I can see.
I see a few folks are still here, right?
It's okay. They're
Which
going.
is fine. I know.
So I did not add Jim Fisher to the room because I heard him mention that he was popping off.
Oh, maybe it was a different. I don't know. Somebody's still. Well, you can try them anyway, right? If they're gone,
Yeah.
But they wouldn't show up still if they're gone, right?
That's what I thought.
I see.
How do we-
I'm
How
gonna
do we
duck
jump
off for
into the
1
breakout
second.
rooms? Yep.
So
So
right
we're-
back, and then yeah, I want to figure out, but I'm gonna take a two.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. I'm leaving my Zoom.
1 sec. Let me move. John, do you see a little message on your screen that asks you to join a breakout room? You totally don't have to. So Mel, do you see the breakout rooms in progress?
No, I see nothing. Oh, wait.
So if you click on the more, the 4 dots on the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see.
I see it.
Okay, so then
Manage participants.
you click on the breakout rooms.
All right, you don't, from just, from the portal that Sarah and I see, we don't see breakout rooms.
Okay, I can assign you guys to rooms.
Go ahead and assign me to one.
Did you just get a notification to go? Oh, it's because I assigned your phone.
Oh, perfect. I see it now.
Okay.
All right, I'm back. Sorry. Okay, can you send us? How do I go visit people?
So Mel just let me know that on the portal, you don't see the total breakout rooms.
Oh, but I can do it from here then.
But I can also force entry you into another room.
Sounds very
If you'd
brutal,
like.
doesn't it? Well, why not? Yeah, because there are 7 different rooms.
I made 5 different rooms.
Five rooms. Okay, so why don't
does
you?
that
Because I don't know
sound
how to. Yeah, if you can just send me to one and then like each of them. Do you have to
Yep.
bring me back? So you just have to send me in and take me out.
Yes.
Okay.
So
All right,
what
just
you're
send
gonna
me anywhere and I'll just come in and say hi
okay.
and then I guess
And
just pull me out whenever because I can't.
I can
really
pull you out.
control.
I'll give you about 3 minutes and then I'll pull you
Great.
back out.
I'll set my clock so I'll know I have 3 minutes in each room. That's great. That's great. Yeah, that's 15 minutes. Perfect. I just hit join. Okay, join.
Great. Hello?
Hey, I think this like Kyber person or something has crashed our Zoom because they're suddenly selling something on our breakout room.
Who is it?
AYBAR.
All right, I'll get them.
Can you kick them out of Zoom? Because it's weird. It's like we can't hear anything. And there's like this ad comes out.
Very strange. Yep, I am getting
Yeah.
them right now.
I think if you take them off, it will go away.
All right, 1 sec.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry. She's gonna try to deal with it. I don't know. So we try to figure it out.
I need to pull everyone out of the breakout rooms in order to kick her out of the meeting, okay?
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Hey, Greg. Oh, you're muted, Greg.
Are we back? We're back.
We're back because we had someone jump into a meeting that wasn't supposed to be in the meeting, so I have to remove them from the Zoom. So I'm just waiting for them to pop back into my screen.
But it looked like it was a Zoom person, or is that just someone pretending?
Yeah, so Sarah is probably gonna hop on and she's trying to get back in. They should be in about 13 seconds. And once they're in, I can get them out. All right. So sorry about that, folks. Let me find them.
Okay, that's really weird. Are we all back?
So we're back. Sarah, if you want to explain real fast, and I'm going to find them for you. Why we had to come back in real quick.
Everybody's out of their breakout rooms now?
Yeah, in
You sound
order.
like a Zoom crasher. I didn't even, that was so weird. Did that happen to everybody or just my room?
I think it just happened to your room.
Okay, so sorry. We're back. We're giving up on the breakout room idea because we went in our room and some ad for like Zoom audio came on. I don't know, somebody snuck in despite our best effort. So then did that just, so you decided to end everybody's breakout rooms and then we're all back. All right, well,
Yes.
if you guys want to go back or do you want to just share what you've done? How do people feel?
We enjoyed it.
Okay.
Let's all talk and kind of discuss what we were doing and maybe some approaches that we would take when we're starting the blending.
All right, we'll start back over. All right, great. So one, I
I'm
know
glad
one
I
room
didn't-
said
I
each of
didn't
you guys
Sarah
made
do the
your own.
blending.
Go ahead, Greg, sorry.
I'm glad that you and Ed do the blending. And I,
See, it's kind of daunting, isn't it?
yes.
That's pretty funny. So anybody wish they were the one doing the blending and not glad we do it?
No,
Yeah,
it would be
Jay?
nice because you could gradually add the flavors you like and find what you like. So you're gonna end up at a point that makes you happy. So that I can see how that could work. It seems like it could be very time consuming.
Yeah,
And it takes a lot of practice, but it certainly seems like it's a lot of fun.
it is fun. It is fun. It is a little exhausting. I mean, honestly, by the end of we usually take about 3 days and sit down and really focus on blends. By the end of the 3 days, we're like, I never wanted I never want to drink wine again. And then about 2 days later, we're kind of over it. But yeah,
There you go.
it's a lot. It's a lot to do.
No, because so like when one of our groups went to all the light ones and then one wanted we did all the new barrels. and
Oh,
put those
interesting.
together.
Yeah.
And to see, and certainly, and we had the press at the end, and so that was obviously a very rich wine, but very lush.
Right.
So
And that's-
people choose and they try to go down a path. One said, try the ones you don't like and try and fix them, which is interesting.
That's very interesting.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did that work out?
I don't know if they finished that. I don't know if they finished that.
Yeah.
Like,
We did the 3 we didn't like, and it came out quite bitter.
There was a
There
reason
you
you
go.
didn't like them.
I mean, no, we liked them all, but the 3 that were not our favorites, I guess.
Sure, I'm not going to be offended. You can say you didn't like
Yeah.
them.
You
And
confirmed
which
it.
were the 3 that you said? So you put 3 together and you felt like it was kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, it was
What were
the
the?
Merlot 300, the I have it here. The Cabernet Sauvignon and the Orion, and the Cabernet Franc in the Use.
Interesting. Okay. So you put those 3 together. And then did you try to take that and add anything to it to see if you could kind of bring it back, or you
No,
just
that's a
thought-
good idea. We should do that in the next plan. We'll do that.
Yeah. Because that's a very interesting approach.
Opposite of you, because I like big wines. So I did the three I liked best the first time, which were the Merlot 300, the Cab Franc Macau, and then the youth barrel.
Right, so I just did.
The Cab Sauv Miguel, and then the youth
Yeah.
barrel for the Cab Franc, and I loved it, of course.
Great.
Yeah. So now I'm doing my least favorite ones. I'm gonna make a blend.
Right.
Okay.
And then try them together and see. Yeah, that's an interesting. So one of the constraints when we do this, here we can use any quantities you want. And one of the things that we do have to factor in is how much we have of each wine, right? So that's why sometimes you'll see we have these really weird blends, or we have, we'll make a little tiny bit of some wine. So we try now to not make less than about 175, 200 cases of anything, but sometimes we just have a blend that we really like that combination, and there's some barrel or some element of it that is kind of crucial to it, and we don't have a lot of it. So we're like, well, we can only pull this thing off if we make 100 cases of it or 75 cases of it or something else. So that's kind of another factor when we're sitting there blending out. But yeah, I like the idea of, you have to start somewhere. So somebody out here is going to be a statistician, but if you have 80, even with these 8, I think there's probably 500 different ways you could blend them, right? So you can't just try all the combinations. You have to kind of have some framework to go on. And I like the taking all the ones you don't like and trying it, and then taking all the ones you do like and trying it, and then trying to see what else happens.
Tell you, all the ones was very organic. It tasted like bland grocery store wine. Like it was very one note in a way.
Interesting. And what was in that blend?
That was the Merlot 181, the Orion Cab, and the used Cabernet Franc.
Right. Okay. So some of the simpler ones, I guess.
Oh.
Yeah. And you said it just came out. They kind of canceled each other out. It sounds like.
Yeah. But I do. That Orion of all of these is my favorite sample. The Cabernet.
Yeah.
I like it. I know every Macbeth is supposed to have more sophistication, but.
No, it's what you like, and it's what you like is good. So, again, and it's, that's why we joke our wines taste good with cashews. It's like they're going to taste good the way we taste them, but somebody else might take the exact same ingredients and make something else that's great, and that's totally fine. So, and I like the Orions. I can see that they have a certain kind of impact on the wine, and if we didn't like them, we wouldn't keep buying them, But they have kind of a big, you really feel them. Yeah.
But saying that the slate has a lot of the press, the slate is which I didn't care for. The slate is my least favorite of all your wines. So now I know why.
Oh, interesting. All right. Yeah. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Of all, it's the one that I only drink if I have a heavy meal, steak dinner type thing. It's not something I just reach for.
Right. And it's a big wine, and it's, you might like it. I shouldn't say have you tried the old ones because it's impossible to get the old ones, but do you have any of the older vintages of it? Have you tried the older years?
No.
Because you can't, because we don't have any, but we might have a little bit. Do we have any of the old ones? So I only say it because my guess is because it is sort of so tannic. It might be one that you would like an older edition, is that the right word? Sort of an older version of it because it had some time to soften. So the big impact happens when the wines are in barrel, but even time in bottle, you're going to have some of that same impact. It's going to happen a little more slowly. So yeah, it might just be that it's never going to be your style. I don't know, but those wines tend to soften and age with time a little bit. But yeah.
So Jay mentioned a little bit earlier when we jumped back in from the breakout rooms that they blended 5 milliliters of everything except the Cab Franc in the new oak, and that they really liked that sample. So they
really interesting. So, and why did you choose to leave that particular one out? There was something about that you felt like wasn't going to fit.
Well,
when we blended them all together before we went to breakout rooms, you said that there was too much Cab Franc, and it's because we had 15 milliliters of Cab Franc and then 5 of everything else, right? So there was actually more. So I thought the one to leave out to soften it would be the one in the new barrel, because that would be the one with the strongest sort of oomph. So that's what we did.
Great, great. And how did you like it? You liked it better that way.
Yeah.
We just pulled the Cab Franc about a little bit. Yeah, yeah.
It's
I think
great.
it was.
Pull back on the Cab Franc, soften the tannins because you got the new oak out of there, and it just kind of mellowed the whole thing out.
Mellowed it out. That's great. That's great. There was just a question about Passeggiata. Is the everything together somewhat like the Passeggiata? The Passeggiata we make a very different way. It does often have a little bit of everything in it. It's when we make Passeggiata, we really want to have a lot of flavor and a lot of palate weight, kind of a lot of that viscosity that we talked about, that heft, but we don't want to have a lot of tannin. So the Passeggiata tends to be made from mostly what we call bleed wine. So when we put the grapes right away in the tank, we run some of the juice off immediately, and that juice has had a very little bit of time to a very little bit of exposure to the skin, so it's very light. It's how most rosé is made. It's how we make our rosé. It's just called bleeding or saignée. And then for the Passeggiata, after we finish fermenting and after we pull all of the free run wine that I talked about off the tank, we'll actually put some of that kind of rosé style wine back over the skins to pick up just a little bit of color. And we also generally ferment the Passeggiata in barrels, in old barrels. And that fermentation in barrels, which really only makes sense if you don't have skins. It's doable, and we have done it, but it's a real pain when you try to put skins in a barrel. Well, getting them in is not so bad. Getting them out again, it's a real pain. For the Passeggiata, when we let it ferment in barrel, we pick up kind of richness and creaminess from the barrel, sort of weight from the barrel, but we use very neutral barrels, so you don't get a lot of that kind of tannin and oak impact from the barrel. So, yeah, that's kind of the recipe for Passeggiata. And the Passeggiata is, in a lot of ways, it's the hardest wine. It's the hardest wine to blend, because to find that balance of kind of a lot going on without adding a bunch of tannin to it can be kind of tricky. So here's I just lost it. The 5 milliliter blend of the 2 Cab Sauves and the new oak Cab Franc was really rich. That's interesting to try. Yeah. Like just round and big. Yeah, great. Anybody else have? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Sarah.
No, you're good. Yeah.
Nathan mentioned that he did the 181 Merlot, 5 milliliters, 5 milliliters of the Orion Cab Sauv, and then 3 milliliters of the Press. And he and Linda both really liked that one as well.
Okay, great. There you go. So we have I'm going to keep this. We have to keep this chat, and we'll start with it. We'll start with it next is January. It would be fun to see what everybody's favorites were and how they compare. I mean, it's not really fair to say how they compare, because we'll have a lot more things to pull on once we really do the blends, but this is pretty fun. We have no idea. Don't worry, that's how it feels a lot of the time. We have no idea what we're doing, but we have fun trying. So this year we did have to blend all by ourselves for the first time. So usually we bring Lucien, our winemaking consultant from Bordeaux, to help us blend, and he has helped us since the very, very beginning. But with COVID this year, it wasn't safe for him to travel, and it didn't make sense. And so Ed and Melissa and I did the blends for the first time, all by ourselves. We felt so grown up having to do it all by ourselves. And luckily, the 2019s, which we were working with, were all really just kind of rich, beautiful wines. So it did make the process a lot easier. This whole blending process is so much easier when you have only good stuff to deal with. When you start having things that are a little, you have something that's a little funky or something that feels really hollow, and you're trying to fill in those holes. How do I put it? It's like the best, it becomes more challenging. It's when we really get our chops. So we're glad that we got to practice on a relatively easy year. So it's good. So I feel like we are pushing our time. I'm going to take 2 minutes and just talk about the charities that we worked with, just to kind of do that public service announcement. And then I'm happy to answer more questions, but just in case, since we're getting close to our 2-hour mark. And then I'll come back to all of this. So I just want to spend a minute to just kind of talk about it, and mostly just to thank everybody, because you guys have supported these two charities that we think are pretty great. And we're just want to show a moment of appreciation. So there are two different ones, and you got these super cute little cards that Zoe put together, which describe them, and on the back is a QR code, which you just scan with your camera, right, if you wanted to go to their websites and find more about them. And the two groups are, the one is the Lila Bean Foundation, and the Lila Bean Foundation is basically working on pediatric brain cancer research and trying to just help promote basically figuring out how to deal with that. You know, it's one of those terrible issues, and it came to our attention because basically one of our son Dennis's good friends, a friend from his soccer team, was diagnosed a couple of years with brain cancer. He had a pretty good run for a couple of years. He had a lot of treatment, and he was really supported by this group, but he didn't survive the battle. So it's it's heartbreaking when you see that, and any disease that hits kids. And so these guys are really just trying to figure out, how to make the most of the research that's going on out there, how to coordinate research among different groups, how to actually fund research, and just kind of do anything they can to try to support that. So I guess we have just a personal connection to that, and it was just something. So anyway, thank you to everybody for their support of that. And if, again, you can look at the card if you want more information or details about some of the great work that they've done. And then the second project is the Baltimore Hunger Project, which we have worked with a number of times in the past. They were going to come on, but they actually have a COVID, Lynn, who runs it, her husband's got COVID now. So just the way the world is, we need to be flexible. And she had just this appeals to me and to us, I guess, in part because I feel like sometimes when you're looking at the issues in the world, they're so big and so complicated, and we feel like, or I feel like, if I can't solve the whole thing, there's no point, right? It's easy to get overwhelmed by kind of the enormity of some of the tough stuff that goes on in the world. And she just had this idea. She's like, let me just see if I can just keep a couple of kids who usually get their meals at school fed over the weekend. I'm not going to try and take on the entire world of poverty or the entire world of hunger or the entire world of children's academic success. But if more kids were fed every weekend, I think we would chip away at that problem. And I think she started making sandwiches out of her garage, and then she's built a little organization around it. And I think they've started sending they have some sort of system where they can pop some food in kids' backpacks, and it feels very discreet. So no one's embarrassed that they have to get the food, and no one's embarrassed that their family is, struggling, which can happen to anybody. And they are up to now, I feel like they're working in 30 or 40 different schools, and they're, providing hundreds of meals to kids. And I just think, as a person who's super crabby right away, if I miss a meal or, take too long to eat, I just think the idea that this many kids are fed over the weekend, they're going to be that much more functional and able to study and able to handle the world, and just that little impact. So it's kind of this small little sliver of kids that they're helping so far. But of course, every bit amount of money that they get is more and more kids that they can feed. And I just think that the impact of that just spirals out into the world, where those kids are going to have a better start in life and a better ability to kind of go out in the world and, keep us moving in the right direction. So that's why we chose those two charities. I think, they're both great organizations. They're both taking on important issues, and they're just trying to kind of do it in a way that's manageable, and in a way that they're hey, we may not be able to solve the whole problem, but we're going to have as much impact as we can. And so you guys have today, or, by doing this, just help to push all that forward. So anyway, I just wanted to take a second on that, and just thank everybody for their support of this whole endeavor. So we can go back to the blends. I know it's a little non sequitur to go back and forth, but I felt like I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about those groups at all. And let's get back to seeing what anyone else played with for their blends. So I see another suggestion here, which was a little heavier on the Merlot 300s, and then the Cab Franc. I was going to be the Cab Sauv, I'm going to think, because that's what the Mescla is. And You got a little bit of like a kind of a chocolatey taste. That sounds pretty good. Anybody else want to talk about their blend? There's Ellie, do you want to pop on and tell us what you thought? You wrote it down, which was nice, but I don't know if anybody wants to unmute and tell us what they thought of their blends. Other thoughts? All right, well, I'm going to try, let's see. Oh, here's Ellie. Yep.
There she is.
I just picked my three favorites, and it was supposed to be the Cab Sauv. No,
Yeah,
The
Cab Sauv.
Mexcla.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it's Mexcla.
Yeah.
You know, it's whatever. It's our weird Spanglish. So, yeah.
and then I wasn't really thrilled with the taste of the Prenza by itself, but I figured it would kind of balance out the other three, and I liked it.
Yeah, great, great. Well, that's often a trick to do, is that you don't necessarily take like all your favorite things. It's like you just find something that might balance something else. And where we, you know, we'll often start is like, hey, this has, you know, this has a nice aroma, but it could use a little more weight. And you put something with a little more weight, even if that wasn't your favorite thing, and it's going to help fill in some of that hole. So that's great. Here's 2 parts each of Merlot and the Cab Sauv, and then a little bit less of the Cabernet Franc. And I think that may make a lot of sense as far as just kind of turning that down. Rick and Andre, do you guys want to talk about what you thought about it? Oh, and I missed Susan's blend. Or Susan or Rick and Andre, I don't know if you guys want to chime in and just say like what your thought process was and what you thought about it. Anybody?
What I noticed, oh, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, go ahead. No, good.
Oh, I just noticed how much I liked them when I blended them together as opposed to just having them separately. So just like if I were to just try the Cabernet Sauvignon, I loved when I blended this CF Hoven and the CS Mescla and the Merlot 300s together. It just improved so much in my mouth as opposed to just separately. So I just thought I'd say that about the blend.
Yeah. I'm still, because I'm busy talking, I'm not blending, and I lost my blending partner. I keep going back to just the original, which was just a mix of everything, right? Totally unscientific, just throw it all together. And I still think it's got more going on and kind of just like more balance than any of the single wines together. And that is, you know, we're always talking about how important blending is, but I think it helps a lot. One of the things that blending does for us too, which is nice, which is when we have different growing seasons, different grapes will show well in different years. So 2020 was a pretty good year all around. So a lot of these wines are really good. I know they're young and a little rough now and everything else, but trust me, in their core, these are going to be some really nice wines. They're going to get there. But sometimes you have a year when like it's really hard to get the Cabernet Sauvignon right because it gets cold before the end of the season. Cabernet Sauvignon is a late ripener, or you know, you have weird weather when the Merlot buds set or the flower is set, so you have a small crop there. So the blending helps us to kind of balance some of those things out over the years. So again, not that the wines are the same year to year, but that we're able to kind of put together things with a similar profile, so that we'll have, you know, kind of the same weight over different times. So great. Well, I think we're kind of running out of our time here. I'm happy to answer any more questions if anybody has them about blending, about any of the wines you tasted, other Black Ankle stuff. But otherwise, I feel like we can set you loose in the world with your pipettes, and you guys can chime in and tell us what you liked. You get to, and you should have plenty of wine, or at least I have plenty of wine left to play with. You can be drinking this for days. So, and you can drink it on its own. You can mix it together. My job is always a public service announcement. So again, if you can find something to do with these little bottles, you make them into vases, bottle other things, then great. If you would like to bring them back to us, we can wash them, and we would ask that you just give them a quick rinse first, but we can wash them and we can use them again for our next little thing. So, you know, we're all about recycling and reusing and whatever. So we're happy to take any of it back, but obviously if you can find something fun to do with any of it, that's great too. Update on the winery. Do we ever put whites in our red blends? The Passeggiata sometimes has white wine in it. The other, we've co-fermented Syrah and Viognier before, which is kind of a classic Condrieu move. I can't think of any other time where we've actually put a white wine in a red. But the Passeggiata, sometimes when we're looking for, again, like a little more, like one more layer of complexity, or like to brighten it up a little bit. So one of the things the Passeggiata needs is relatively more acid, which white wines have. We'll sometimes add a little bit of white wine to it. I think those are the only times. It's not the norm, but it can be done. I think there was a question of, have we done barrel fermentation? We barrel ferment, or some of our whites, we barrel ferment the Passeggiata. We once, I think, made a Pinot in a barrel. We definitely did it. I think it was only once, where we actually put the grapes in a barrel. But to do that, you have to, well, you could get them in through the little, the barrel's got like the big belly and it's got like the little hole. So you could stick the grapes through the little hole, but to get them back out again, you basically have to take the whole barrel apart. And it's just a huge pain. And luckily we didn't love the wine, because if we loved the wine, we'd be like, all right, we're gonna have to do this all the time. So we tried that. It didn't seem worth it. So now our red wines, aside from the Passeggiata, are fermented in tank and then go into barrel. And then the white wines, depending on the wine, are either fermented in tank or fermented in barrel. Do we do a concrete egg? We do not have a concrete egg. So Zoe's just making this stuff up. So there are these crazy wine tanks, which are concrete eggs. And there's like two different theories. There's partly the idea that like they're literally like shaped like a giant egg. There is a thought that shape helps. I mean, there's like the really far out biodynamic people are like, it's tapping into the universe in some different way because of the roundness. The maybe slightly less far out idea is that the currents, because like the way liquid moves through a round shape or through an oval shape, is going to change. So it kind of changes the wine. And then concrete itself holds a very steady temperature. So the temperature fluctuations are less in a concrete tank. The problem with concrete tanks is they're really big and really heavy and hard to move around. So we've not tried them. It's kind of like somewhere in our like, yeah, it would be kind of fun to try. Once we get all these construction projects done and the winery, maybe we're finished in the next iteration, maybe we'll try a concrete tank. So let's see, would you find you can predict how they will evolve with some age, or is it a bit of a wild card? We have spent a lot of time trying to learn how it will evolve. And I will say we have certainly a better idea than we did in the beginning. It's one of the reasons why we have this whole library where we're trying to save older wines and open older wines once in a while, so we can practice that. We can see what the wines do. And I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give us like a 7 that we can kind of predict. So I'd say like, yeah, we have a pretty good sense of where the wines are going to go. Once in a while, we're surprised, but not terribly often. We kind of have a pretty good sense of it. And then how many people decide? It's really when Lucienne's here, Lucienne, and then Ed and Melissa and I sit down, and we are the kind of hardcore blenders. We will sometimes bring stuff out. This year was weird because COVID, and we didn't we just had to be really careful not to be breathing on anybody else. But even this year we bring like 3 wines out, and then have kind of our full-time staff. So kind of Christina and Amanda and Zoe were like, okay, which one of these do you like better? And just to get some feedback on different people's opinions and what they thought, or hey, what are your impressions of these wines? And then we'll kind of take that back and work that into the conversation. So I guess the final say comes down really to the 3 of us, but we definitely are trying to pull some impact in. In other years, when we felt like, it's just a little safer to have more people in the same room, and you're drinking, you can't have masks on, what all of I don't have to explain all the issues. Then we'll try to have more of, again, kind of our core staff come in and do that. But it's a pretty, we find it works better with like a relatively small group, so that you can just be really candid about it, and you can really kind of just like think and brainstorm and just feel like, I don't know, like it's easier to just to really mess around with all of it, I guess, as we go. Yeah. Other questions? Did I miss anything on my chat? Lost anything else? Woo! I did something weird on my computer. I think there was a question of what's going on in the winery, but spring, we did, the frost. Everybody always wants to know about frost. We did not get frosted at Black Angle over the last 2 nights. It's been super cold. We had a little bit of frost at Live Edge at our new plantings at the Live Edge farm. We decided that was a good thing, because we're always looking for the silver lining to anything, because here's how we get to, it's a good thing that we got frosted, which is that those are not vines that would be giving us fruit anyway. So the issue with frost is that it kills the shoots. Our little shoots are about this big and they're super delicate right now. But a grapevine can push a second layer of shoots, but it won't bear fruit. So the live edge vines, we're not going to bear fruit this year anyway. We wouldn't have let them bear fruit anyway. And we should still have enough leaves to keep all those vines. And it wasn't a tremendous number of vines. It was like a few little spots here and there. They should be able to push the next shoot and give the plant enough leaves that will be okay as far as, keeping the plant healthy for the year. But it did help to alert us to like, hey, here's the areas of the farm where you might have colder spots. So there is a little bit we can do to help mitigate the colds. That great giant green thing at the end of the field, if you're looking down from the taste room, we call it a frost drain, and it basically like sucks hot air. It sucks warmer air from up high down and pushes the cold air out of the way, so it can help. It can buy us a couple of degrees on the right kind of night, but often like the last couple of nights, that's all we needed. So we did run those at Black Ankle. I don't know if they helped or not, but we didn't get frosted. So anyway, so that's the update on that. How do we choose the nonprofits that you support? I mean, really, we often have kind of something that has resonated with us one way or the other. So these two, I think I just talked about kind of our own personal connection to them or what they've made sense with for us. Other years, again, it's been through just a charity that we've supported over time or that we have, some direct connection with. I guess our usual kind of focus tends to be, we feel, and I don't want to say it's like the things we feel the most strongly about, because there's lots of things there's lots of good charities out there, but we tend to be interested in kind of issues of food and poverty and equity and kind of like just trying to pull the whole world, kind of trying to give the whole world a fairer head start or a more equal footing to go on. That tends to be like where our focus is. So those are the ones that resonate with us the most often, but it just depends over time. Just kind of, I guess, just the idea that everybody should kind of have a fair shake at the beginning of the day or the end of the day or as life goes on. And, what are some of the things that can kind of help us support that? So that's how we choose those, I guess. Anyway, here's Zoe. Look, Zoe, how come you're not sending me all the Zoe comments? Yes, I know. Melissa and Zoe who keep me afloat in here and saying, you forgot to talk about this or you forgot to talk about that. So, and lots of hard work, all these little tags and the bottles and how to set them up. And, there's a lot that goes into the behind the scenes on all this. So, I will send a shout out to the people who are typing, but thank you to the whole crew. There were a lot of little helpers in there sending emails like thanks. So anyway, so thanks to all of you guys for your help. And thanks to all of you for participating, because obviously it would be really boring if we sat here by ourselves and did all of this. So I think we're pretty good. So everybody, don't go home. Usually I just say, go home and play with your wines. Enjoy these wines. We'd love to hear, anybody's thoughts on what you liked or didn't like about the afternoon or what worked and didn't. Any thoughts you have about the wines or the process. And I hope my brother-in-law's Cuban and they always have a New Year's tradition. It was always like next year in Havana is like a kind of like, may the world get normal again so we can go home. And I will say on this, maybe next year at Black Ankle. So like the world is normal enough that we can meet in person. I don't know. We'll see. I feel like we're getting there. Although I think we were able to hit a few people from farther away. We did ship some wine relatively far. So that's one of, again, looking for the silver linings in this whole crazy world we've got. It is nice for us to be able to kind of catch up with the folks that are a little farther afield and wouldn't be able to come out. So thank you to everybody for coming out and have a lovely evening. I think the rain is starting where we are, so it's perfect timing to go snuggle up with your favorite blend.
Sarah, thank you very much. We learned a lot.
Oh, good. Well,
Awesome.
thanks for all everybody's chiming in and making the wines. It's great.
This mixing stuff is very complicated. It takes a lot of time.
It does.
But it's
It
good.
does.
It's fun.
It's fun though. Great.
Thank you.
Thank
Never done it
you.
before, so check it off the bucket list.
All right, great. There you go. Now you know how to do it. You know, and I will say that people think it's like the world's biggest faux pas. Like if you're drinking one wine and somebody tops up your glass with another wine, but like you can go to the wine store and buy a couple different wines, like buy a Cabernet Franc or a Merlot or a Cab Sauv and play with them yourself. Like that is I'm giving you wine permission to play with wine and see if you like something better. We will sometimes when we have a wine, if we just have like a random wine that we don't like very much, we'll try putting other things with it and see if we can make it better. So it's just meant to be fun. It's meant to be enjoyed. So I'm glad everybody had a chance to see how we do it, and I hope you'll keep going at it. Great. All right. Thank you, everybody. Take care. All right. See, Florida. We got all the way to Florida. That's great. That's good. All right. Good night.
Thank you, Sarah.
Bye.
Take care. We love
Yeah,
you guys. All right.
Take care. Thanks.
Thank you.